Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take apart complex ideas and really pull out the insights that matter most.
That's the plan.
And today we've got a theory that's, well, it's pretty explosive. It might just change how you look at, well, everything culturally produced in the last 15, maybe 20 years.
It's this idea that pop culture, the art, the music, the stories we tell ourselves, it didn't just fade away slowly.
No, the argument is much sharper than that. It's that culture actually peaked, hit its absolute high point, and then effectively died.
Right. And died at a very specific moment, too. We're talking 2007, 2008, like pinpoint precise.
It sounds almost like science fiction, but the sources we're digging into today argue this isn't just, someone complaining music was better back in my day.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
This presented as a detailed, evidence-based case. It argues the quality and the shared relevance of art collapsed because the very structure supporting that shared experience just crumbled.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We need to figure out why these sources are so adamant about this specific window, say 2006 through 2008 being the absolute.
Then we have to look at the two big factors they blame for the drop-off. One's political, the other's technological.
And then the really heavy part. What does it mean to live now in what these sources pretty bluntly call a post-culture? What are the consequences?
And the core idea running through all of this is about story. The source material suggests that a healthy culture tells great stories, risky ones, interesting ones.
Whereas a sick culture, or a dying one,
tells bad stories. Or maybe just repeats the same stories over and over. Or maybe worst of all, it takes potentially good stories and just tells them badly, by committee, playing it safe.
Prioritizing profit over actual vision.
Exactly. So we're looking for that moment when society sort of flipped that switch.
All right, let's get into this peak claim. 2007 and 2000. The idea is the quality and just the sheer amount of great stuff coming out then may be overwhelming. Maybe we didn't even realize how good it was.
Yeah, it suggests a certain cultural confidence, maybe. A time when studios and networks were actually willing to greenlight challenging original work.
Because they believed the audience could handle it, or even wanted it.
Right. They still trusted the audience to engage with something complex or new. And that confidence, the sources argue, really defined that specific period.
So let's look at the evidence. Film seems like the obvious starting point. 2007 is often brought up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. There will be Blood and No Country for Old Men coming out basically at the same time.
It's incredible. Two absolute titans of filmmaking, uncompromising vision. And they were filmed, miles apart?
Yeah, famously. It's almost symbolic. That level of successful, ambitious art hitting simultaneously, that's just rare.
But the argument isn't just about those films, right? The sources say it's about the depth of quality.
Exactly. That's just the tip of the iceberg for 2007. You also get David Fincher's Zodiac. Just meticulous.
And Michael Clayton's smart, complicated thriller, Into the Wild.
And even comedy. The analysis points to Superbad as maybe the last truly great and importantly good-hearted teen comedy.
Showing that even lighter stuff was hitting a high note.
Right. It wasn't just serious drama peaking. And then 2008 rolls around, and there's no let-up.
The Dark Knight, the film that kind of proved superhero movies could be serious, complex cinema.
For sure. But then you also have intensely personal films like The Wrestler, just raw.
And Tropic Thunder, which, looking back, feels incredibly risky.
Sources definitely single that one out. They argue it's one of the last great, smart comedies Hollywood made before. Well, before the genre sort of tied itself in knots, afraid to offend anyone.
It feels like a different era of comedy entirely.
It really does. And another key point for the peak theory is how universal it felt. It wasn't just adult dramas or edgy comedies.
You mean like kids' movies, too?
Yeah. Great children's cinema was absolutely thriving. Think Ratatouille in 2007.
Oh, fantastic film.
And WALL-E in 2008. These weren't just cute cartoons. They were visually stunning, complex stories that worked for kids and adults. No pandering.
That kind of holistic health across genres and demographics, that does strengthen the peak argument, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests the whole ecosystem was firing on all cylinders.
The analysis also mentions smaller films from that time, right? Films that maybe weren't huge blockbusters, but were still high quality and daring.
Oh, yeah. Crucial point. You had films like The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Visually incredible, very meditative.
And The Mist. A great kind of B-movie horror throwback, but with that absolutely brutal ending.
Right. They wouldn't make that ending today. Or think of Once, that tiny Irish musical that was just so original and heartfelt.
It felt like something completely new.
And even films that divided people back then, like, say, Juno or Clint's Gran Torino.
Yeah, people definitely have strong...
But the sources argue, even if you didn't love them, they were more daring, had a stronger voice, were more original in concept than so much of the kind of assembly line stuff we get now. There was just more willingness to take a chance.
Okay, so the argument is getting stronger. And then the sources push it back slightly to include late 2006, to make it a 3-year run.
Yeah, they argue some key December 2006 releases really cement this window, like Mel Gibson's Apocalypto.
Which they call nearly perfect. Bold claim.
It is, but it's a stunning piece of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men still feels chillingly relevant, a landmark film.
So if you take all of 2006.
Then you add Scorsese's The Departed, The Prestige from Nolan, Borat, which was just a cultural atom bomb.
Can't forget Borat.
Idiocracy, which seems like satire then and feels like a documentary now. Even things like The Pursuit of Happiness is a density of quality. That's the core argument.
You could walk into a cinema back then and your odds of hitting something, or even great, were just much higher.
Much higher. It's hard to argue against that point when you see the list.
Okay, so that's film. But the theory doesn't stop there. The real clincher, according to the sources, is what was happening on television at the same time.
Ah, yes, the murderer's row of TV.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the argument gets almost undeniable, they claim. We weren't just getting great movies. We were getting legendary television, all airing concurrently.
The overlap, that's the key.
It's unprecedented.
Yeah.
And the source basically says, look, make a list of the, say, top 10 greatest TV dramas ever made.
Okay.
Chances are at least 5 of them were airing new episodes, often hitting their absolute peak seasons sometime between 2006 and 2008.
5. Which ones are they?
The Wire, The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, and The Shield.
Wait, The Wire and The Sopranos were ending their run.
With some of their most devastating seasons, yeah.
While Mad Men and Breaking Bad were just starting, launching their first acclaimed season.
Exactly.
Yep.
And The Shield was building to its incredible finale, that concentration of narrative genius, all competing for eyeballs and cultural conversation at the same moment.
That is staggering. These were complex, demanding shows, too. Not easy viewing.
Not at all. And it wasn't just the heavy dramas. You had Lost right in the middle of its best, most mysterious seasons.
Before it. Well, before it got complicated.
Right. You had Curb Your Enthusiasm, just consistently brilliant. South Park and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia were doing some of their most iconic, boundary-pushing stuff then, arguably before certain cultural chills set in.
And the sources mentioned Flight of the Conchords, too.
Yeah. Debuted on HBO in 2007, called extremely underrated, hilarious. And you had things like Ricky Gervais's Extras airing around then, too. Just quality comedy everywhere.
So if we accept this 2006 to 2008 window as the contrast with now becomes really stark.
That's the argument. They'd say, sure, maybe 1999 was a slightly better single year for film, or 1975, or go way back to 1939, fine.
But no period since 2008 comes anywhere close to matching that volume and breadth of master across both film and television hitting us.
It felt like the last moment of collective cultural and before things started to fracture.
Now, we have to be fair. Great things have been made since 2008.
Oh, absolutely. The sources acknowledge that. We've had incredible films like Whiplash, Sicario, Social Network, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Even The Banshees of Inisherin recently, which some argue is even better than In Bruges from 2008.
Right. And on TV, you get standouts like the first season of True Detective. That was 2014.
Right.
Or Chernobyl in 2019, just an absolute masterpiece mini.
But the source's point is that these are exceptions, outliers.
Yeah, they describe them as moments of brilliance spread out over nearly 2 decades. And crucially, they're drowned in a sea of slop. The endless remakes, the sequels, the franchise management, the superhero fatigue. It's the stuff that feels safe and calculated.
So the probability of finding something great has plummeted.
Dramatically. Especially, they argue, in the last 5 or 10 years, your chance of just clicking on something streaming and finding something genuinely original, let alone great, it feels much smaller.
We celebrate something like Severance almost because it feels so rare now.
Exactly. It stands out against this vast backdrop of what the source calls mediocre streaming sludge, just designed to be passively consumed. That density of quality, that feeling that brilliance was almost common.
Yeah.
That's what's gone.
Okay, so if we tentatively accept this idea of around 2006, 2008, and a pretty steep decline afterward, we need some big reasons why. The fall-off seems too sharp for just taste changing.
Right. And the source material identifies 2 major events, both happening right during that peak period, that it claims provide a powerful explanation for the cultural collapse that followed.
2 huge shifts.
Yeah, twin factors, one political, one technological. And the argument is they didn't just change art, they fundamentally altered how society communicates, how we see ourselves, how we process information. Hashtag, tag A, the political shift.
Let's start with the political fact. The source points to the election of Barack Obama in 2000, taking office in 2009.
Yes. Now, we need to be really clear here. The source we're analyzing presents a specific viewpoint. It argues that the arrival of what it terms the first truly far-left president acted as a catalyst for an era of, well, they use the term wokeness.
Okay, and the impact of that, according to this theory, was on creative freedom.
That's the claim. The source suggests that this political shift created an environment where artistic expression that was previously seen as maybe risky, interesting, or provocative started to die off. A chilling effect, essentially.
That's a strong claim. Linking a presidency directly to a decline in artistic risk, what's the evidence they offer beyond just the timeline? Because correlation isn't causation, right?
Absolutely. And the source anticipates that pushback. They argue the key evidence isn't about specific policies, but about what happened to certain genres. Comedy is the main example they use, kind of the canary in the coal mine. The observation is this. If you look at lists of the best, most acclaimed original comedies of the 21st century film, TV shows the genre basically falls off a cliff around 2012, 2013.
Oh.
It just seems to disappear from relevance by the end of Obama's first term.
So the argument is that a rising tide of political correctness, or maybe the fear of social media backlash, made comedy too dangerous to produce.
That's precisely the argument. That comedy, which often relies on transgression, on pushing boundaries, became creatively neutered because the potential cost of getting it wrong, of offending someone, became too high.
And studios just backed away, defaulted to safer bets.
That's the theory. That studios, networks, producers became hypersensitive to potential backlash, which was now amplified by social media, and they just retreated to the safest ground possible. Established IP, sequels, remakes, things that wouldn't cause waves. This political social climate, they argue, killed the ambition for originality and risk.
Okay, so that's the political argument as presented by the source, but you said it was considered the secondary factor?
Yeah, the source is quite explicit that while they see this political shift as significant, the technological shift happening at the exact same time was far more fundamental, the real engine of the collapse. Hashtag B, the technological shift, the determinative factor.
Right, the technology. And the specific culprit identified is the iPhone.
The iPhone.
Yeah.
Released June 29, 2007, smack bang in the middle of that supposed cultural peak. The source argues that this date is arguably the single most important inflection.
It's kind of mind-bending to think that No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, Zodiac, they were all conceived, greenlit, filmed, maybe even edited in a world before the iPhone existed, before constant mobile internet.
It's a crucial realization. The iPhone wasn't just a new gadget. It fundamentally changed our relationship with information, with media, and with each other. It unleashed the era of mass mobile social media.
Let's look at those adoption rates again.
It's stark. In 2007, the source says maybe 23% of U.S. adults had ever used a social media site. Twitter was tiny. Instagram, TikTok didn't even exist.
And now,
it's near total saturation. By 2012, half of adults were on social media. Today, for many people, it's basically constant. It dictates huge chunks of our waking lives.
And this explosion, enabled by the smartphone, is what the source argues killed the monoculture, the shared experience.
Precisely. That's the absolute core of the technological argument. As our lives increasingly centered around these personal, glowing boxes, we lost the communal spaces, the shared reference point. The monoculture began its march to extinction right then in mid-2007.
And today, the source claims that process is basically complete.
Yeah, we went from one largely shared cultural landscape, even if we disagreed about parts of it, to a completely fragmented culture, shattered, as they put it, into 300 million little pieces.
Each piece being fed its own unique diet of content.
Exactly. Fed by algorithm, not by human curators with taste or a sense of shared importance, but by code.
And the code's goal isn't cultural cohesion.
Not even close. The code's only goal, according to this analysis, is to maximize your engagement, keep you staring at the screen. And the easiest way to do that is often with lowest common denominator slop.
Mm-hmm.
Personalized, addictive, isolating content.
Okay, let's really unpack this term mono, because it's central to the whole theory. It's easy to misinterpret it as meaning everyone liked the same things.
Right, and that's not quite it. The sources are clear. The monoculture wasn't about universal taste. It was about universal awareness, shared reference points.
Like your example earlier, even if you hated The Sopranos in the early 2000s.
We knew who Tony Soprano was. You understood the references. You knew it was a major cultural event, even if it wasn't for you. Everyone was more or less swimming in the same cultural waters. We had a shared language.
And that shared language existed because of shared access. We all went to the same handful of movie chains. We browsed the same blockbuster aisles.
We watched the same limited number of TV channels. Geography and scarcity kind of forced a shared experience, didn't they?
They really did. And the sources use music as an earlier example of this fragmentation process.
Yet, they argue music peaked and fractured maybe a decade before film and TV did, mainly because the tech barrier, digitization, file sharing hit music first, around 1999 with Napster.
And 1999 is cited as a potential musical peak too.
Arguably, yeah. a time when pretty much every major genre, rock, pop, hip-hop, R&B, country, was incredibly vibrant and producing huge mainstream stars. You had massive acts who, actually played in.
And what happened after Napster and widespread
Fragmentation.
Yeah.
Atomization. The source argues that today, rock music as a mainstream force is essentially dead. Other genres has kind of blended into this generic, hyper-produced pop sound. It's harder to distinguish clear lanes.
And the shared listening experience died too. You compare something like watching MTV's TRL back,
where millions of teenagers saw the exact same 10 music videos every day after school, whether they liked them all or not.
To now, where everyone's listening to their own personalized Spotify playlist or watching algorithm-fed YouTube clips. There's no shared focal.
Not at all. And that lack of a focal point, that fragmentation, directly led to what the source calls the death of true celebrity.
Meaning universally recognizable stars.
Exactly. It's almost eerily symbolic that Michael Jackson, maybe the last truly global superstar everyone on Earth knew, died in 2009, right as the monoculture was breathing its last breaths.
That's quite a...
It frames the shift stark. Think about generational divides before. In the 90s, your parents might not have liked Eminem or Britney Spears, but they absolutely knew who they were. They saw them on magazine covers, heard them on the radio.
There wasn't this sense of a complete brick wall between generations' cultural awareness.
Right. But today, the source argues that your average 14-year-old likely has a whole roster of personal heroes, YouTubers, TikTokers, streamers that most adults, maybe even most 25-year-olds, have literally never even heard of.
This is that concept of vast but narrow fame.
Yeah, it's a really weird new phenomenon. Pre-2008, if someone had, say, 5 million dedicated fans, it probably meant 50 million other people vaguely knew who they were. There was spillover.
Cultural osmosis.
But now you can have someone with 100 million YouTube subscribers, making them objectively one of the most watched humans on the planet. And they can still be completely unknown, totally obscure to huge swaths of the population outside their specific algorithmic niche.
Their fame is incredibly deep within their silo, but has zero width outside it.
Precisely. There's no shared context for them to exist in.
So the consequences pile up. Radio's cultural power, basically gone. MTV, irrelevant as a music source. Blockbuster, dead.
Movie theaters still exist, obviously, but they don't hold that same central place in the cultural conversation. It's all fragmented.
And consumed individually, mediated by this infinite scroll.
Fed to you by, as the source puts it, a faceless, nameless, mindless, soulless, lifeless code.
It's a stark contrast to the old days, where even your local radio DJ could be a household name, a real community figure, a human curator.
Yeah. We've traded human gatekeep, flawed as they were, for an invisible algorithmic.
Let's dig into this algorithm a bit. We know its goal is retention, keeping us watched. But what effect does that have on us, on the culture?
Well, because its only goal is maximizing time on screen, it's completely amoral about the content. It doesn't care if it shows you a cute puppy or, hate speech. As long as you keep scrolling, it optimizes for reaction, not reflection.
And because it's constantly tailoring itself to you, it starts to shape your desires too, right? It doesn't just give you what you want, it tells you what to want based on past clicks.
Exactly. It narrows your horizon. It feeds you more of what you already like, making it less likely you'll encounter something genuinely new or challenging. It prioritizes comfort and confirmation over discovery.
So in this kind of environment, creating a real cultural touchstone, something that breaks through the noise and lasts, becomes incredibly difficult.
Almost impossible, source art, especially for anything longer than like a TikTok video. Even if a movie is a huge hit financially or a song gets billions of streams.
We experience it alone, on our phones.
Yeah, sandwiched between completely unrelated pieces of content fighting for our attention. It doesn't land the same way. It doesn't embed itself in the collective conscious.
So a movie can make more money than Titanic did, adjusted for inflation, but it just doesn't become the same kind of cultural sensation.
That's the claim. It's consumed, maybe even enjoyed, but then it evaporates. It's barely noticed at the same time by everyone.
This brings us back to that Titanic example from 1997. It's used so effectively in the source material.
It really is, because everyone remembers it. Right. Whether you were a kid or an adult, you either saw it or argued about it or couldn't escape hearing about it. The saturation was total.
And the Celine Dion song?
Oh God, the song, My Heart Will Go On. The source jokes about hearing it echoing through the woods on a remote hike. It was that ubiquitous, that level of inescapable shared experience around a piece of pop culture.
Just doesn't happen anymore. It feels structurally impossible.
It probably is. Yeah. Which leads to that killer question the source poses. When was the last time a movie gave us an iconic line or an image that everyone recognized, something that crossed demographics and lasted?
It's hard to think of one recently, but everyone, even kids born way after 1997, knows that image of Kate Winslet on the front of the ship, arms outstretched.
It's instantly recognizable. Modern films just don't seem to produce those moments that stick in the same.
And the metaphor the source uses for that kind of lasting image is
an impact crater. An iconic moment leaves an indelible mark on the surface of the culture. But you can't make an impact crater if there's no solid surface to hit. If the culture is just this swirling, fragmented cloud of gas.
like trying to make a dent in Jupiter.
Exactly. The source uses that analogy. An asteroid hitting Jupiter just gets swallowed up, incinerated, diffused instantly. That's what happens to would-be cultural moments now. They just vanish into the algorithmic fog.
Even something huge and popular, like, say, the Armageddon soundtrack back in '98. Maybe not high art, but everyone knew those Aerosmith songs.
Instantly iconic, inescapable. That phenomenon feels dead.
Which circles back to the idea of gatekeeper. We used to criticize them, the studio heads, the radio programmers, the blockbuster buyers.
Right. People railed against the gatekeepers. But the source argues maybe they were necessary. Flawed, yes, but necessary. They maintained boundaries. They curated a shared reality, even if it was limited.
Because if a movie wasn't playing at your local cinema or wasn't stocked at Blockbuster,
You basically couldn't see it. That limitation, that imposed scarcity, forced a degree of shared focus.
and those human gatekeepers are gone now, but the gate hasn't vanished.
No, it's been replaced by one single gatekeeper that's far more tyrannical and sinister, the source argues, precisely because it's invisible, the algorithm, and its motives are purely retention and profit, not cultural value.
And this tyranny is about to get worse with AI.
That's the bleak projection. AI, according to this analysis, will take the already shattered cultural landscape and just explode it into an infinite number of microscopic, like dust.
How changes?
Well, right now, the algorithm mostly shows you personalized content made by other humans. Soon, the algorithm won't just show you content. It will create the content specifically for you instantly.
Or maybe create content that makes you feel like you created it just by prompting it.
Exactly. Which leads to what the source calls the ultimate cultural loneliness.
Explain that.
The machine will learn your desires, maybe even prompt you about what you might want to see or hear, and then generate it just for you. A movie, a song, an image.
So in the near future, your absolute favorite film could literally be a film that nobody else on Earth has ever seen because it was generated uniquely for your prompt combination.
That's the endpoint described, the complete death of shared art. You generate your own personal pop culture.
The source calls AI art soulless and dead, but that's not the main problem they say.
No, they say the bigger issue, the truly dangerous part, is that it's fundamentally lonely. It severs the final threads of shared cultural experience, locking each of us into a perfectly customized, utterly isolated silo. #tag outro. So that's the arc we've traced, from that potential peak of shared confident culture back in 2007, 2008.
Through the twin impacts of the political shifts, as the source sees them, and that huge technological disruption of the iPhone and the algorithm.
Right up to where we are now, living in this fragmented algorithmic reality. The sources argue the shift from a shared culture to an isolated digital pseudo-culture is basically complete.
It's pretty heavy analysis, bleak even. Does the source offer any way out, any optimism at all?
Just a glimmer, a very small one. The only potential positive path they suggest is a conscious rebellion against the machine, against the fragmentation. By actively, intentionally building strong local physical community, real-world connections.
So things like joining a local theater group, starting a book club, a neighborhood film studio.
Exactly. Small scale, tangible, shared experience. Choosing to engage with people face-to-face around a shared piece of art or activity rather than scrolling alone. It's presented as a conscious choice. Reject the machine's lonely perfection and build something real, even if it's small.
That's the optimistic path. What's the alternative?
The alternative, and maybe the more likely path, according to the source, is that we just stay plugged in. We accept the matrix.
Living alone, together, sort of. Constantly distracted, maybe amused by the personalized feed.
But never truly connected, never really happy, just drifting in this post-culture, this non-culture, where nothing is shared and nothing truly lasts.
So, understanding this theory, understanding how the structure arguably broke down, it puts a choice in front of us, doesn't it?
It really does. If culture is defined by what we share, and the dominant technology is designed to prevent sharing, then we have to actively decide how we want to engage, both with art and with each other.
The final provocative thought the source leaves us with is pretty stark. It suggests that the last real decision we might make collectively is simply whether we want to have a culture or not.
Yeah. Knowing how the system works now, knowing it pushes us towards isolation, what are you going to choose to share? And who are you going to choose to share it with? That's the question left hanging.